Today's lesson is the origins and history of Groundhog Day. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Candice.
And today we're going to be talking about something called Groundhog Day. It's not really a holiday. It's an observance in the United States, in a special part of the United States. You hear about this on the news from time to time, but again, it's not really a big holiday. It's just kind of an interesting tidbit in the news. There's some town in Pennsylvania that celebrates Groundhog Day with a groundhog there. That's kind of burrowing animal, an animal that lives in the ground and pops out once in a while. And there is this tradition that takes place there. It involves how soon spring is going to come.
Yeah, so people are keen to know when winter will be over or how long winter is going to be. I suppose after quite a brutal winter in the northern hemisphere, people are very eager to see some springtime. So they've developed all these interesting traditions. So this one has to do with groundhog in America, in North America, but in Europe, it has to do with any really tiny, small animal. They have stories about different small animals like badgers as well. And this event happens in a town with a very funny name. How do you say it?
Punxsutawney.
Punxsutawney.
The only reason I know how to say that is because you hear it in the news regarding this event. Otherwise, this is a pretty insignificant town.
Yes, well, I remember it from long ago when I watched a movie called Groundhog Day. And I had to look back and see what a groundhog was. But the movie itself was quite entertaining. And it was about a weatherman reliving the same day over and over again until he got things just right.
Yep, starring Bill Murray. I actually saw that movie in the theater here in good old Taiwan. That probably lets you know how long I've been here. But let's find out all about Groundhog Day celebrated in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll be right back to discuss it.
The origins and history of Groundhog Day. Every year on February 2nd, a strange tradition takes place just outside the town of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Just before sunrise, a crowd of spectators gathers around a site called Gobbler's Knob, where they wait with anticipation for a groundhog to emerge from a burrow. The famous groundhog, known as Punxsutawney Phil, is about to make an important prediction. If Phil is able to see his shadow owing to sunny weather, he will return to his burrow, thus signaling 6 more weeks of wintry weather. If, however, the day is cloudy and Phil cannot see his shadow, then residents can expect spring to arrive early. This particular Groundhog Day event formally began in 1887, but the yearly ritual has roots that go back even further.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到名词 spectator， 指的是观看体育比赛、活动或是表演等的观众。例如 The new stadium can hold 10,000 spectators. 这座新体育场可容纳1万名观众。或者Many spectators at the hockey game were dressed in their favorite team's colors. 曲棍球比赛的许多观众都穿着他们最喜欢球队的颜色。再来，我们看到单字 resident， 这个字是名词，它的意思是居民、住户或是居住者。我们可以说 Wendell has been a resident of Tokyo for 10 years. Wendell 已经住在东京10年了。又或者说 After the typhoon,Many residents of the city were without power. 台风过后，许多城市居民都没电可用。接着我们看到单字 emerge， 这个字是动词，它的意思是出现、浮现或是露出。举例来说 The young baseball player emerged as one of the team's most talented prospects. 那名年轻的棒球选手以全队最有前途球员之一的姿态崭露头角。又或者说 As the potter shaped the clay on his wheel, the form of a bowl slowly emerged. 随着那名陶艺家在露炉上为陶土塑形，碗的形状就缓缓出现了。另外补充这个字的名词 emergence, E-M-E-R-G-E-N-C-E, emergence. 它的意思是出现或是浮现。像是 The emergence of mobile payments is completely changing the retail experience. 行动支付的出现正在彻底改变零售体验。 又或者说 The emergence of social media has dramatically changed the way we communicate. 社群媒体的出现大幅度地改变了我们的交流方式。
Okay, so we're talking about Groundhog Day, a bit more specifically, we're talking about the origins, where it comes from, and we're talking about the history, all about what happened regarding this holiday in the past. So every year on February 2nd, which is today, a strange tradition takes place just outside the town of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I think that's a town in west central Pennsylvania, which probably means it's kind of near Harrisburg there, if you're familiar with Pennsylvania geography. But here we've got the phrase to take place, which means to occur or happen. So in this particular case, this tradition takes place, or this holiday takes place. It happens in this small town in Pennsylvania.
And what happens is, just before sunrise, a crowd of spectators gathers around a site called Gobbler's Knob, where they wait with anticipation for a groundhog to emerge from a burrow. So this is really quite a funny pastime. It's really quite entertaining, and well, I find it quite hilarious. But there are lots and lots of people that come to this town, Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, just to see this groundhog emerge from its burrow. So, of course, a spectator is someone who's there to observe, to watch, to experience an event. For example, a sports event. We often talk about spectators at a sports event. And they go to the site called Gobbler's Knob to wait for the groundhog to come out of its burrow. So emerge would be to come out of or come into view. Another word would be appear from its burrow. A burrow is a shelter for a small animal, and they usually live underground. So it's usually a small hole or a tunnel in the ground dug by a small animal. So sometimes that would be a mole that would live in a burrow. In North America, it's the groundhog who lives there. And of course, there are other animals. I'm sure you know more animals from North America, Roger.
Some of them, indeed, like gophers and groundhogs and badgers and stuff like that. But in any case here, yes, this is an event that involves this particular animal that lives in the ground, and we've got these spectators gathering in a place called Gobbler's Knob, and they wait with great anticipation. Anticipation means you're really looking forward to something happening. It hasn't happened yet, so you're kind of anxious. If somebody invites you to their home in Kaohsiung, you could say, "Oh, I'm looking forward to visiting you with great anticipation. I can't wait to go down there and see you." And of course, people are waiting for this groundhog to emerge from a burrow. Their homes are underground.
The famous groundhog, known as Punxsutawney Phil, is about to make an important prediction. So he's going to tell us something about the weather. So if Phil is able to see his shadow owing to sunny weather, he will return to his burrow, thus signaling 6 more weeks of wintry weather. So in other words, if we see his shadow and it's sunny enough for us to see his shadow, that means that the winter is going to be longer. That means 6 more weeks of wintry weather. And if, however, the day is cloudy and Phil cannot see his shadow, then residents can expect spring to arrive early. So if it's a cloudy day and Phil does not cast a shadow, then the residents or the people who live in Punxsutawney, they can expect spring to arrive early, which I'm sure they get very excited about if there is no shadow.
Indeed, winter can be fun. We enjoy skiing and skating and stuff like that. But where I'm from, people get sick of winter pretty fast. It's cold all the time, and we really want spring to arrive. So basically, if he sees his shadow, then it will be a long winter. If he doesn't see his shadow, then it will be a short winter. And residents, of course, will expect spring to arrive early. The residents, of course, are the people who live in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And this particular Groundhog Day event formally began way back in 1887, but the yearly ritual has roots that go back even further. A ritual is something that people do over and over again. A ritual could involve some sort of tradition, like the marriage ritual, the things you do at a wedding, for example. And, of course, this ritual is something they do every year, and it goes even further back than 1887. It has a long history. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
February 2nd falls roughly halfway between the winter solstice and spring equinox, making it a significant date for several ancient cultures. The Celts observed the day as Imbolc, a festival marking the beginning of spring. Then, when Christianity spread throughout Europe, the holiday became Candlemas, which celebrated the presentation of Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem. The day's association with the seasons remained, however, with some believing that a sunny Candlemas signaled another 40 days of cold weather. In Germany, this belief evolved into a myth involving hedgehogs, badgers, and other small animals. It was only if these animals cast a shadow on Candlemas that the day was considered sunny enough to signal a late spring. Then, when German immigrants settled Pennsylvania in the 18th and 19th centuries, they adapted the custom, using the native groundhog as their animal of choice.
第二部分我们看到单字 immigrant， 这个字是名词，指的是外来的移民或是侨民。例如 Most of the people in this part of town are immigrants from Eastern Europe. 镇上这一区的大部分居民都是来自东欧的移民。或是 The city of Toronto attracted over 100,000 immigrants in 2020. 2020年，多伦多吸引了超过10万名移民。最后，我们看到动词 adapt， 指的是使改造、适应不同情况或新用途，或是改编、适应。举例来说 ，Engineers adapted the application for use on tablets. 工程师修改那个应用程式给平板电脑使用。另外，在这个字的字尾加上 ation， 就会变成名词 adaptation。它的意思是适应或是改编。我们可以说 The film adaptation of the novel did not receive positive reviews from critics. 小说改编的电影没有得到评论家的正面评论。也可以说 This rock song is actually an adaptation of a piece of classical music. 这首摇滚歌曲实际上是对一段古典音乐的改编。
February 2nd falls roughly halfway between the winter solstice and spring equinox, making it a significant date for several ancient cultures. So, as Roger mentioned, of course, this tradition is not limited to North America. They do it in several different cultures, and they do it usually on February 2nd because of the seasonal significance of February 2nd, right between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So one of the ancient cultures that also observe the day are the Celts. The Celts observe the day as Imbolc, a festival marking the beginning of spring. So the Celts, of course, are from Ireland, and they used to call what is known as Groundhog Day in Punxsutawney, they used to call that day Imbolc. And that festival, of course, marked the beginning of spring.
Right, the Celts or the Celts, you can pronounce it both ways. And yes, indeed, this is a festival they celebrated. Then, when Christianity spread throughout Europe, the holiday became Candlemas, which celebrated the presentation of Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem. So, yes, indeed, the Celts originally were not Christian, but Christianity took over Europe. It spread throughout Europe, so they had to sort of change the holiday, and this particular holiday, which was Imbolc, became Candlemas, more of a Christian celebration, and that celebrated the presentation of Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem. So they were at the temple, and somebody said, "Look, everybody, here's Jesus."
Right, but despite the spread of Christianity, the day's association with the seasons remained, however, with some believing that a sunny Candlemas signaled another 40 days of cold weather.
Okay, so let's go to Germany now. This belief evolved into a myth involving hedgehogs, badgers, and other small animals. A myth is kind of a story from the past, and people are not sure if it's true or not. So the Germans are very creative, and they came up with their own version of this story. This story involved these kinds of animals, hedgehogs, badgers, and other small animals like gophers, like groundhogs, etc.
Right, and of course a myth is a traditional or ancient story. So it was only if these animals cast a shadow on Candlemas that the day was considered sunny enough to signal a late spring. So only if, on condition that. So if you see these words, we have to have one condition to fulfill another event. So only if these animals cast a shadow on Candlemas, then they would say, okay, we're going to have a late spring. Then, when the German immigrants settled Pennsylvania in the 18th and 19th centuries, they adapted the custom using the native groundhog as their animal of choice. So, of course, immigrants are people who move from one country to live permanently in another country. And there are several German immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania. And I think the most common or the most well-known group of German immigrants in Pennsylvania are a group called the Amish. But when they settled in Pennsylvania, they also brought with them their traditions and their stories and their myths and their culture. But they couldn't bring along all the animals that they found in Europe, so they decided to adapt the custom using the native groundhog. So when you adapt something, you change it to suit your circumstances.
Exactly, and of course they did not want to introduce foreign creatures into North America. Of course, that can cause problems, so they decided to do the smart thing, the wise thing, and just use this tradition with local animals, which would involve the groundhog. So they are so cute. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part.
Unsurprisingly, groundhogs are unable to predict an early spring with any real accuracy. Still, the tradition has stuck around, and Groundhog Day is celebrated with excitement and a dash of good humor to this day.
Okay, the third part begins by saying, unsurprisingly, groundhogs are unable to predict an early spring with any real accuracy. Yes, everybody knows there's really no science to this. Maybe one year, indeed, this did happen, but it's a coincidence. But what the heck, it's fun to have this little festival. And besides, lots of people go to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania and spend money. It's good tourist money.
Yeah, so a lot of these traditions are kept solely because they make money, not because they have any real value or because they're based on truth. It's all just a lot of fun. So still, the tradition has stuck around. When we say stuck around, it's persisted, it's continued. And Groundhog Day is celebrated with excitement and a dash of good humor to this day. So we will say a bit of good humor. Sometimes we'll use these quantifying words, a pinch of salt, a dose of something. So it's just to say we enjoy something, we're doing something in the spirit of fun. And of course, this day is just done in the spirit of fun because I don't think a groundhog really casts a very big shadow. Let's just hope that we don't get stuck in a time loop like Bill Murray in the movie Groundhog Day. That would not be fun.
It would not be fun. And of course, there's really no way of knowing if a groundhog actually consciously sees its shadow. We don't really know if a groundhog has the mental capacity to understand that concept of a shadow, which means basically a dark spot behind something when it blocks the sun or other kind of light. So, of course, these are things you could discuss with scientists and if there's any scientific validity to these claims. But there aren't, as we've stressed. This is just for fun. And there you have it, the origins and the history of Groundhog Day, especially as it's celebrated in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our beloved Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们今天要练习文意选填的题型，那我们先快速浏览题目的10个选项。好，来看 A observed， 它可以是动词 observe 的过去式，表达观察、庆祝，像是庆祝节日这样子，也可以是过去分词，用来当形容词用，去表达说被看到的、被注意到的。那么 B prediction， 它是名词，表示预测、预言、预告。 C significant， 它是形容词，表示重要的、显著的。 D evolved into， 这个 evolve into 可以表达演变为或是演化成什么什么。E anticipation 是名词，可以表达期盼、期望或者是预料。F association 它可以表达关联、联想或协会，也是个名词。再来看到 G yearly， 它可以当形容词或副词，表达一年一度或是一年一度的、每年的。那么 H settled， 它可以是动词 settle 的过去式，就有使定居、安顿的意思。那也可以是过去分词，用来当形容词用，去表达说定居的、安顿的。那么 I accuracy，它可以当名词，表达准确、准确性或者是正确、正确性。那么 J stuck around， 当我们用 stick around 就是表达逗留、停留或者是流传下来的意思。那看完选项，我们接着就来做题目咯。这篇课文标题是 The Origins and History of Groundhog Day， 就是要表达 Groundhog Day 的历史起源。那来看到第一个空格是出现在 A crowd of spectators gathers around a site called Gobbler's Knob，where they wait with 空格 for 点点点 wait for 就表示等待什么什么。那这个句子它在 wait 和 for 之间加了 with 空格，我们可以判断空格是要填入名词，用 with 名词当做副词去修饰这个 wait。 10个选项当中就只有 B prediction， E anticipation， F association， I accuracy 这些是名词，可是语义上来看就是要选 E anticipation， 表达期盼、期望。当我们说 wait with anticipation 就是期盼的等待着。好，再来看到第二个空格，它这边是写到说 The famous groundhog 点点点点 is about to make an important空格，从前方的不定冠词 an 和形容词 important 可以判断空格里面要填入单数可数名词。那剩下的名词选项就有 B prediction， F association， 还有 I accuracy。 那么 accuracy 当可数的时候，它只能用在 an accuracy of 名词去表达什么什么准确度。那根据语义，正确答案应该选 B prediction。 我们说 make an important prediction 就是做一个重要的预测。再看到第三个空格，它这边出现在 This particular Groundhog Day event formally began in 1887, but the 空格 ritual has roots that go back even further。 空格前面看到定冠词 the， 然后后面是名词 ritual， 可以推测空格里面应该填入形容词，或者是呢可以当作形容词的过去分词。那符合选项的就有 A observed， C significant，G yearly 和 H settled。 文章前面说明了每年2月2日的传统，那从语义上来看，它应该是要表达这个特殊的 Groundhog Day 土拨鼠日活动正式开始于1887年，但这个年度仪式的根源可以追溯至更久之前。那最适合答案是 G yearly。 好，再看到第4个空格，它这边是写说 Making it a 空格date for several ancient cultures， 空格前面有不定冠词 a， 然后后面有名词 date， 可以推测空格里面应该填入形容词，或者是可以当作形容词的过去分词。那符合选项的就有 C significant 和 H settled。 那么根据语义呢，应该要选 C significant。 Making it a significant date 就是表达使其成为一个重要的日子。好，那第5个空格，我们看到它这边写说 The Celt空格 the day 点点点，空格前方是主词 the Celt 凯尔特人，那后面是名词 the day。 那我们就可以推断空格里面要填入有及物用法的动词或者是动词片语。根据句子的判断，时态应该是过去式。那符合及物用法又符合时态的选项就有 A observed， D evolved into， H settled。 好，那语义上来看，最适合是选 A observed， 它有庆祝的意思，所以 The Celts observed the day 点点点就是表达凯尔特人庆祝这一天怎么样怎么样。好，再看到第6题，这边空格它是 The days 空格 with the seasons remained， 空格前面是所有格The days， 那么后面是介系词片语 with the season， 还有动词 remained， 所以 the days 空格 with the seasons 这部分是当主词用，我们可以推断空格是要填入名词，那剩下的名词选项有 F association， 还有 I accuracy。语义上来看，我们应该要选 F association 关联联想，所以他说 the days association with the seasons 就是表达这一天与季节的关联。再看到第7题，他说 In Germany this belief 空格 a myth， 空格前面是主词 this belief，后面是名词 a myth， 那我们就可以推断空格里面要填入有及物用法的动词或者是动词片语。根据判断它是时态过去式，那符合及物用法又符合时态的选项就只剩下 D evolved into 还有 H settled。那根据语义要选 D evolved into 演变为什么什么，所以 evolved into a myth 演变成一个神话。第8题 Then when German immigrants 空格 Pennsylvania， 那从句子结构判断，这边就是要填入有及物用法的过去式动词，符合选项只剩 H settled。 settle 就可以表达使定居在什么什么定居，那这时候可以当及物或不及物用，所以 when German immigrants settled Pennsylvania 就是说德国移民定居宾夕法尼亚州时。好，再看到第9题，他说点点点 with any real 空格空格前方的词组 with any real 点点点，这边可以判断空格其实是要填入名词，那名词选项只剩 I accuracy 就是准确或准确性咯。在第10题 Still the tradition has 空格，这边我们其实只剩下 J 选项，就是 stuck around。 我们还是来看一下空格前面它是用 has， 所以空格里面你要么就是填入名词来当做 has 的受词，或者是填入过去分词来构成这个现在完成式。那符合的选项是 J stuck around， The tradition has stuck around 就是说这个传统流传了下来。好，那以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Spectator，A crowd of spectators watched the magician's performance. Emerge. The bear emerged from the cave after the long, cold winter. Resident. The residents of the small town voted to build a new library. Ritual. The monks performed various rituals to celebrate the religious holiday. Myth. Many ancient societies had creation myths explaining the origin of the world. Immigrant.In 1950, Italy was the source of the largest number of immigrants to the United States. Adapt. The engine's design was adapted for use in extreme weather conditions.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Candice.
See you next time.